Hello and welcome everyone to Coach for Mind. And I'm your co-host, Dyuti Bharadwaj. Coach for Mind is India's first mental health podcast where we aim to provide you with a simpler and easier perspective on different aspects of your lives so that you can create your life into a beautiful experience coming from a place of deeper understanding and a sense of clarity within your mind. We also aim to increase awareness about mental health among the generation and our population today. And we hope that using the information that we provide you, you're able to create a beautiful experience for yourselves and for your loved ones. And the topic for today's podcast is what I feel extremely relevant for today's day and age, especially when most of us are ambitious and career driven and love to set high financial goals for ourselves. But in the midst of when we are growing in our careers, somehow, somewhere, we tend to lose balance in adjusting different areas of our lives. It might be our health or loving relationships. And there comes a point where we tend to just be filled with confusion and we're not able to decipher what exactly went wrong and where. And it fills our lives with lots of stress in our work as well as in our personal lives. So if you have such questions in your head, and most importantly, if you want to establish a sense of balance in your lives, including your career, and create it a wholesome experience for yourselves, you are at the perfect place. Today, we are going to have an insightful conversation and try to break things down for you and for us because we're going to have an amazing conversation with none other than the founder of this podcast, a licensed clinical psychologist himself, coming from an experience of the past 7 years working with clients and a variety of institutions. Please help me welcome Mr. Lekh Bajaj to the show. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Diti. Thank you for a wonderful introduction. And I think today's topic will be very important for college students as well as young professionals because I think, especially in India, the work culture is very confusing. And I have a lot of clients who are working, and some are working in startups, some are working in big organizations, and a major part of their stress comes from their workplace. Obviously, there are interpersonal factors which are even more important, but there is a major chunk of their problem that occurs at workplace. And I hear all kinds of stories and how different bosses or leaders are, how the reasons why employees change their organization too frequently. So I think this problem is on the rise as the private sector is growing in India. I think this is need of the hour that friend conversations should start around mental health at workplace. In the West, it's still much more, but I think in India, it's still at very nascent stage. People have just started to talk about.
Exactly.
Otherwise, stress is just taken for granted that work है तो stress तो high होगा ही. But I don't think that necessarily have to be true. So I think it would be good that we answer certain questions that people might have about mental health at workplace.
Yeah, definitely. And I loved it the way you said that it doesn't have to be necessarily true. We somehow just accept things sometimes that they are going to be there and we have to live with it. But maybe not. So maybe we'll try to explore that today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'll begin with my first question, a very basic one, just like we always do. We always try to make things simpler for ourselves and for our audience. So I want to ask you that why do people experience stress in their workplace?
Sure. So I have done some basic research how people across the globe express their stress, why they get stressed at work. So couple of those things that I could find, and I think our audience would also be able to relate to it. Most important factor is job satisfaction. Either it could be in terms of money, that they feel that they are not being paid as compared to the amount of work that they have to do, or is it simply that they are not at the right place with respect to their skill set and their interpersonal personality, etc. Which that job satisfaction increases the stress, but at the same time there are external factors as well For example, one very common factor is micromanagement from immediate boss or super boss sometimes. So, and that's where boss versus leadership also comes into picture. We need leaders, not bosses.
Yeah.
And again, some companies have that culture, and I think it starts from the top and goes till the very last employee in the company. That culture is spread out like that. So I think the approach has to start from the top. That change must happen in the top leadership, and then people will realize that, for example, micromanagement is not the way to go. Furthermore,
Okay.
job insecurity, especially during the COVID period, it was too much, which increased the stress because we were getting the news that so many people are being laid off from different organizations.
Yeah.
That job insecurity also increases the stress. Apart from that, even with some of my clients have experienced that they don't experience growth in a particular organization, and then they get fed up that this is not the right place, and that is why the average time period that an employee stays in an organization is reducing very fast. Within a year or 1.5 year,
Okay.
people are switching organization, which is neither good for the organization or not for the
Nor the
employee to
employee.
build that trust.
Yeah.
So these are some of the reasons why people experience stress. And another important part could be unrealistic expectations. This you might have seen in the college also, that if a startup is coming up, then it is by default a given that startup culture is like too fast paced, and people have unrealistic goals, unrealistic expectations, unrealistic deadlines. And then the founder or the leader decides that unrealistic deadline, and they pressurize themselves as well as the employee, thinking that that's the only way to go. But they don't realize when
Yeah.
it, instead of increasing the performance, it declines the performance and increases interpersonal conflicts. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting, especially the part that you mentioned about growth. I've heard a lot about, especially we have been a generation, or our previous generation was the one that preferred government jobs, which I think is something that just stops your growth at that point. And now we are a set of people who want to experience growth. Like regularly, we want to have challenges, grow somewhere in an organization, different aspects. So that's quite interesting that you mentioned that. There's one more thing that I wanted to ask you. That there's another factor that increases stress is where there's a tussle between passion and what you're doing just for the sake of doing. So is that true? Like that adds the stress of to the people and employees?
So a certain chunk of people, yes. Some people, it's also depend. It also depend on person to person. Some people, their need is more about that how much money I'm getting or what position I'm getting, or the, let's say, a certain brand that I'm getting. For some people, passion or interest is not that big of a deal. So they can survive any kind of job unless and until their other needs are getting met. But some people, for them, the type of work that they are doing, whether it has meaning to it or not. So for those people, it can actually lead to depression as well. And I think I can relate to
Okay.
this because when I was working, I was deeply dissatisfied with the work that I was doing in that organization. And that was as an engineer, and that is why I just one day I decided I can't do this anymore. I just resigned. Like within half an hour, I made a decision I can't do this anymore. Then I shifted to mental health. So yes, for some people, it is an absolute need to find meaning in their work. For some people, other things are priorities, so they can. And I think that's what you mentioned, that in our previous generation, passion was not a priority. Stability and money was priority. Hence, they were very satisfied with even in the government jobs.
Yeah, exactly. So the way you mentioned that it could also lead to depression, the job dissatisfaction. So I want to know, in what different ways is this stress that we experience at our workplace harmful for us?
So again, like any kind of mental health disorder, I divide it into three parts: physical, how it affects our physical body, how it affects our psychological body, and our behavior, the external behavior that we see. At the physical level, workplace stress specifically can lead to headaches, feeling fatigued and tired in the body. Heartbeat might increase at different times of the day. Sleeping patterns can go haywire, or even insomnia can come, that people are not able to sleep. And I'm sure our audience might be able to relate to some of these symptoms. And even stress can lead to stomach and digestion issues as well, which sometimes we don't know that stress and anxiety can lead to stomach
Yeah.
issues. And another physical could be that the sexual drive might reduce, or interest in sexual activity might suddenly, which is again another symptom of depression. Second, at the
Okay.
level of psychological body, it can cause depression, anxiety, feeling irritable with the family members or friends, or becoming very pessimistic in life because the person is very dissatisfied and they might see everything as negative. And at the cognitive level, it can reduce our concentration, which in turn would reduce our work performance and our ability to make decisions. So that's how stress can impact our psychological body. And last is behavior. Again, because stress can reduce work performance, so we might not be able to get as much done, which might further, let's say, lead to dissatisfaction or some interpersonal issue at work. The whole cycle might repeat. It can lead to interpersonal issues, getting angry, losing interest in work, or even sometimes people go into isolation. And this is pretty common that some people are very isolated at their workplace. So that might also be a symptom. That person was earlier outgoing but is now started to isolate. So it should ring some alarm that someone might need help. And another very common, which I think is increasing at a very fast pace, is substance use, alcohol or drugs. And this again, I see a lot that especially in the young professional generation, the weekends are about doing some substance or the other. Monday to Friday, काम करो, and
Yeah.
weekend rates all filled with different substances because there is no other way of coping with the stress that people know.
And that is somehow glorified also, isn't it?
Yes, and even in
Yeah.
the TV series that are, or web series that are coming,
Yeah.
weekends
Yeah,
means
exactly.
that the whole house is full of smoke and people are just, yeah.
Okay.
So once in a while for entertainment, if it's done, then that's good. But if it is done as a way of coping with stress, then that's not healthy.
Yeah. Totally. So, what can we do, like from our personal level, to reduce the stress that we experience in our work?
Hmm. So again, couple of suggestions, and if people want, they can like take notes also. So when it comes to stress at workplace, there are two reasons why the problem is occurring, and I think solution would also come differently for both. One is systematic problem, how the culture of a company is the problem which is leading to stress. So that needs to be dealt in a different way from the employer's perspective, what needs to be done in the whole
Yeah.
system. But as an individual, sometimes we are also part of the reason. So there, I think I have a couple of suggestions. One is that the person should express their concern to their colleagues or to their boss or employer, because sometimes we keep on taking and feeling stress we never express. And I've seen that in some of my clients also, that we don't express that I'm not okay with this, and then we do not have boundaries and people keep on giving more work to us. So boundaries are important. That if you are not okay with something, politely you must convey that I'm not okay with this. And sometimes we are too insecure to lose the job that we don't say anything, and it just keeps on piling up. But boundaries are important. Next is that as an individual, there must be some de-stressing ritual that I must have, which can include any kind of breathing exercise, some form of physical exercise, or some form of mindfulness or meditation, just to calm down the whole physical and psychological system. Otherwise, it will reach a burnout state sooner or later. So there should be proper, maybe on a daily basis and even on a weekly basis. Abhi, one of what is referred to as hustle culture is Monday to Friday you work like crazy, and then Saturday, Sunday you party like crazy. Sooner or later, this
Okay.
cycle will break because body is not getting to relax in a very natural way.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
always either running on chemicals or running on the deadlines. So this can lead to burnout. Another could be seeking emotional support from the friends and family, or in case nothing is helping, then seeking professional help can also, reaching out for counseling or therapy
Right.
can help. And last, I think this I can recall from my conversation with one of my recent clients. So we discussed that how breaks are very important and at different level. There must be some break on a daily basis. That it shouldn't be like that if you have worked from 9 to 6, then 9 to 6 you're just working. There should be some planned breaks in between. Similarly, work break should be there on a weekly level and on a monthly level and on a yearly level. Yearly level, for example, could be a vacation.
Vacation. Yeah.
So having breaks at different time of different duration is very important. So these are some suggestions which a person can do at their individual level. And in case the person realizes that the job itself or the culture of the company itself is toxic, then I think changing the job is the only.
Okay. So, like, what could be, like you mentioned, there are two aspects of this. So, this is what we can do on our level. What are the practical changes that employers can bring in the work culture, infuse in, so that it infuses more liberty and happiness in the workplace as a whole?
And again, I think this part is even more important. And I hope this video somehow reaches certain employers as well. And again, I would
Yeah.
request the audience also to share this video so that it can reach out to more people. And here are a list of things that I think employers can do, and which again, uh, one individual can practice meditation, seek emotional support, but that won't address the systematic problem. And I think systematic
Exactly.
problem, one is to destigmatize talking about stress. Because usually what happens is if someone says that stress बहुत ज़्यादा है, then naturally certain sentences come. Stress तो होता ही है, इतना stress तो लेना ही पड़ेगा अगर promotion चाहिए, etc. So anyone expressing stress is in a way dismissed, that this is useless. Stress तो होगा ही, and even managers convey the same. This reminds me
Yeah.
of, at one point I was not well when I was working 7 years back in the job. I took 2 days off and went to office on the third day. My boss asked me, "What happened? You didn't come for 2 days." I said I was not well. He said, "ये क्या होता है? दो लगाते हैं सब ठीक हो जाता, आ जाते ऑफिस." And I think somewhere around I
Oh my
just
God.
got done with that system. That again, even there is no space for physical health there as well. He said कि दो लगाते हैं,
Oh
fever
my
चला
God.
जाता, आ जाता. So I think that is important, that if someone is not well physically or psychologically, it should be seen with compassion rather than giving such. So basically he was saying that stress is usual, or even if you're unwell, you should come to office,
Yeah.
which I think will suddenly disconnect to people, that the organization doesn't care about me, why should I care about you?
Exactly. Exactly.
Another is things like overtime, etc., are also taken for granted these days. Some of my clients have said that, again, because of COVID, there are no boundaries of what are the work timings. People are
Exactly.
supposed to work at night, during the weekend. There are no boundaries, and I think
It's true for colleges as well.
yeah, for colleges, and
University.
which is again an unhealthy culture, because it can again make the employee feel that the organization doesn't care about you. And if you don't care about the employee won't care about you. Eventually the work will suffer, and our profits or whatever we are trying to achieve will suffer if there is no trust. Another important part is that this, I think, slowly is happening in the Indian subcontinent as well, that different employee assistant programs are coming up. which was not the case earlier. You can consider it some kind of a counseling service within the organization. And again, it must be
Okay.
done in a confidential way, not that the counselor will go and tell everything to the employer. But in a
Yeah.
confidential, some counseling service or employee assistance program should be there, where employees can just go and express themselves. That can also be a very good way of managing stress. And another thing which I would suggest, especially the young startups, is that deadlines are important, but uh, this should not become a culture that we will set very tight deadlines. Because again, you will feel pressurized, you will pressurize your employees, then employees will get frustrated and they will retaliate directly or indirectly, and the work will suffer. Rather, it should be discussed in a mutual way. That's the best way. That what should we keep the deadline to be, and then that can be negotiated rather than imposing deadlines.
Correct.
And again, startups are there is a good hype about startups, but it should be ensured that because startup is dreaming to become a big company, and for it to become a big
Yeah.
company, the culture should be sustainable. You might push things for 1 or 2 years, but then if you're not able to sustain it, then the company will be affected in the future. So it should be done from the very beginning of the an organization. And last, I think if even if case in case there is some sort of overtime etc. is needed, there should be rewards and compensation for that, rather than just expecting कि ये तो करना ही पड़ेगा.
Correct.
So these are some of the changes which can be made from the management side.
Okay. What you mentioned about like mutually deciding the deadlines and everything, I think that happens in established companies. Startups, like maybe they're new to this and because they're rushing it, that's why they are making it that way.
And
The other way around.
sometimes I think a lot of even big startups are coming up. They are being started by very young people, which is good in a way. I think Zepto
Yeah.
was one example. It is one of the founders is 19-20-year-old. So which in a way is a good thing,
Okay.
but they must be mentored by a senior, or they themselves should realize that it's not only about getting the funding and just getting the work done. The interpersonal part of it, the trust factor in an organization is very important, and that must be taken care of. Otherwise, it might take a good initial start, but it's not sustainable. If you create a culture of competition and lack of trust in the organization, that will impact the organization sooner.
Correct. So we were talking about this growth of an organization, and I think it also requires the growth of individual employees as well. When we're looking at growth, it is a wholesome concept. So, what do you think helps organizations grow, whether it's competition or collaboration among the employees? And what impact either of this has on the individual stress that the employees feel in their lives?
Absolutely. Hmm. And again, I think growth, because eventually organization wants to grow, employees also wants to grow.
Exactly.
So it's in the best interest for both the parties that if it's a collaborative approach. So this again reminds
Yeah.
me of one of my clients where, and again it was a startup which has a good funding and it was growing at a fast pace. The founder, what he did was he gave the same project to two different employees who had similar skill set, and he asked that both of you do it and let me see who will do it better, and if accordingly your promotion and your salary etc would also get affected. Now this is a culture of creating competition which might in the short term lead to better quality of work because there is competition, but it is also creating some insecurity in both the employees that I have to fight this person, I have to fight this person. Eventually there is no trust in the system, and which will sooner or later will come back home, like affecting the organization itself. For the short term, this might lead to good result, but long term trust is fundamental need of human beings, and wherever there is no trust, people leave, they don't stay. Another example
Right.
is so employees, again, they might uh, also feel very energetic and passionate that I'm ready, give me as much as work you can. But eventually, our body and mind has its own limits. And if we put too much pressure on it, the individual will start to suffer and then the organization will suffer. And I think there are a lot of research which says that because of stress, people take absent from the organization, and then those number of days of absenteeism, if they are combined, then eventually it is affecting the revenue and profits as well. So eventually it is
Oh.
even financially you are suffering if you increase competition and stress in the environment.
Hmm. I think it's more about developing people.
Hmm.
Then that automatically develops the organization. I'm not sure, but that sounds a better thing.
Yeah. I heard
Yeah.
some sort of, you can call it a joke about this. So one person asked the founder that why are you spending so much time in training your employee? What if they leave next year? It will harm our profit.
Hmm.
The founder said, suppose if I don't train him and he stays in the organization, what about that?
Wow, that's good. Even I would like to share like about my experience also, because it was I just did my intern. So that was my first industrial experience, and it was a beautiful experience for me because it was totally collaborative in every form. And it was so different from what I experienced in my academic life till now, because everywhere in academics there is competition because there's a class of people doing the same thing and trying to get the grades. There it was like you're given a project and almost everyone in your team is trying to help you in some way or the other. They come, they ask me, and I used whenever I used to approach them, they used to give me substantial knowledge that helped me grow. So that was a very collaborative environment, which actually made me really want to go back there and learn in that environment. So I think instead of competitive, for me, I would prefer a collaborative, loving environment where I can feel that the people around me, my managers, my seniors, really care about me and my growth as well.
Absolutely. And I think this can solve a lot of problems. Another thing which is coming up recently is that uh, one good employee works in an organization, they are getting X package. Then they know that if I switch the organization, I'll get 1.3x, 30% jump. Then if I change that organization, they keep on jumping the organization. So this is, the person might be getting good package, and the companies are feeling that I can't trust this employee, he will just leave. They will leave because you are thinking that only through by giving salary and money you can stop that person. But if you can give them
Yeah.
care, trust, empathy, then even if you're paying slightly lesser than some XYZ organization, they will stay with you, because eventually
Exactly.
our even more important need than money is to feel that I can trust people here and people care about me. If you can create that culture, people will stay with you even if you might be paying slightly lesser.
I think it's the relationships that we share with people that actually makes us stay anywhere. Otherwise, it's very easy to leave, but it's the bond that you have that will actually make you think twice before you leave that place because of the sweetness of the emotions that you feel.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it is just a game of calculation that employer is doing his or
Yeah.
her calculation, employee is doing his or her calculation, and they are not
Yeah.
trusting each other. Wherever the benefit
Yeah.
is based on calculation, they will leave or they will fire. So
Correct.
unless this, which is again not sustainable.
Correct. So, like, we have talked about stress and we basically talked a lot about its negative impacts in our lives. But we also know that somewhere, some point of time, competition or even competition aside, even stress is good and bad. We hear about both aspects of it, that stress could also be good and bad. So, is workplace stress that we experience, is it good for us in any possible way?
So again, I will explain it. We might have discussed it in our previous videos as well. The graph of stress versus performance or motivation. So
Okay.
it
Yeah.
is usually a bell curve.
Bell
If
curve,
audience can
yeah.
imagine. So this is motivation. This is level of stress. If initially, if the stress is very low, the performance would also be very low. This is referred to as the, in a way, laziness, etc. also fall in this bracket. That level of stress is very less and we are very less motivated. Somewhere some pressure builds up and we reach certain peak. And I think even students can relate to it. When the exam date is coming closer, stress is increasing. Till that time, we are not at all worried about studying. And the date is coming closer, the stress increases. And then our motivation to study also increases. It reaches a peak, which is like a very good balance of stress and performance. This is referred to as eustress, which is a healthy stress. Which, even for example, today I have to go and do grocery shopping. I need to feel slightly stressed about it, that something needs to be done. Otherwise, why would I care? So this is called healthy stress or eustress. And if it crosses a certain level, then the performance would start to decline. And that is referred to as distress, which is negative stress, which reduces the performance. And that is what, in a way, we are talking so far. Whatever we have talked about is with respect to distress. If there is competition, lack of trust in the team, then it will lead to distress, which will reduce the performance. So that's why deadlines, etc., are important, but they must be reasonable. If they are unreasonable, then they lead to distress and reduce the performance. I think I'll ask the editor to put that graph here of the stress.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And even I've read it in Atomic Habits that challenges, only if they're like a 4% more than your current abilities, they motivate you to keep working for it. But if it's too hard and too challenging for you, you won't go for it. So it should be like close to the boundary that you have. So that will help you grow in a sustainable way.
Absolutely. And I think, again, sustainability is the word, I guess.
Yeah.
Eventually, if something is not sustainable, then it will go down sooner or later.
Correct. So this is my last question to you. Is it possible for us to be successful in our careers and still be totally distress-free?
Sure. So, I think, yes, it is possible in a way, but then there would always be some situation or the other, maybe in our personal life or interpersonal life or in the organization. So yes, it is possible, but some sort of oscillation would always occur. Life would not always be a straight line.
Yeah.
So I think, though, apart from those oscillations, and those oscillations can include any unfortunate event or some very important deadline might come or some project might come. So slight bit of periods of distress will always be there in our personal or interpersonal life, and those we have to learn to cope with. But I think otherwise, apart from those kind of special situations, I think it is possible to be successful without getting distressed. And this culture must change, that people should realize that it is possible and it is important also to work towards it, both at an individual level and as an organization. Another part to your question, which is success, I think that also depends on what is success for an individual. And I think that's also part of working on reducing the stress as an individual. Like we discussed, that for someone, money might be success. For someone, freedom might be success. For someone, interpersonal relations might be success. For someone, doing a work which is of their passion and interest might be success. So first, the person has to ask themselves that what is most important for me? What gives meaning to my work or my life? And if your things are in line with that meaning, then you will be successful. Distress for something which might be distressful for someone might not be distressful for you. So this personal questioning should also be important. That is why what we discussed at the beginning, that someone in a government job might be depressed, someone else might be pretty chilled out, because depending on what gives meaning to their life.
Right. I think it's very important to keep checking with ourselves that what we are trying to pursue, if that's what we truly want, if that's what is truly in line with our personal desires or our personal idea of what our life should be. For example, I felt like when I was doing my intern, it felt like a perfect fit to me in every possible way. I was the most productive. I felt I was working in a loving and caring environment, and that's what matters to me more than maybe the stipend or maybe the kind of something else. Yeah. So that was more important to me. That differs from people to people, person to person, and that's what questioning we should keep doing to ourselves. With ourselves.
And I wish someone would have talked about this again when the placement season was there at my time. But I think during the placement season, everyone, especially in colleges, everyone is just talking about package and the brand name. Nothing else.
So true. So true. It's happening right now in all the colleges. Like right now, it's the placement season. So that's the conversation at our mess tables when we go to our classes. Everywhere is going on. People are accepting PPOs, and they're like, "You should go for something better. You can get a better package." But maybe they got a good experience when they went to do an intern. But that makes them question themselves that am I doing the right thing? I'm not going for a bigger fish or something like that.
And even like people sometimes talk to the alumni that how is the culture in this company, etc.
Yeah.
Again, they mostly focus on package kaisa hai, working hours, but no one actually talks about the environment kaisa hai. They don't ask their senior or they ask guidance, interview कैसे crack होगा, GD कैसे crack होगा, but they don't ask the company के अंदर how is the environment, and so that should be a criteria. But I think with time people do realize after 4-5 years of working that what is most important.
Exactly. We learn to set our priorities. That's true. Okay. So I think it has been a wonderful conversation. We got to learn so much, and I hope that our audience feels the same as well. Please let us know in the comments below if you could relate to any part of the video, and if you want us to make more videos on any special topics that you want to have more clarity and a different perspective on, we would love to do that. Share this video with your loved ones, your friends and relatives, and let them also know that mental health at workplace is something that should be talked about, should be considered and respected if someone is expressing their concerns. So like this video, put a comment and subscribe to our channel so that you always get an update when we are putting a new video on our channel. And please do not hesitate to follow Coach for Mind for mental health of yourself and that of your loved ones, and follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn to get regular updates on mental health. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Make sure you subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that whenever we come up with a new video, you are notified about it. Thank you.